Hi everyone, it's me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alanna and I'm a Canadian, but I have been living here in the UK for the last 7 years. I love learning about the UK, about Britain, British culture. So I spent the last 40 hours and 51 minutes watching the best British films of the 21st century. And I have some thoughts. Now, first up, what films? How do you decide which films? This was actually really difficult because what makes a film British? Is it a British director? Is it a story about Britain? Even if it's made by an American company? How do you decide? Now for this experiment, I looked to BAFTA. So that is the British Academy of Film and Television Arts. BAFTAs, you know them. Now BAFTA actually has a Best British Film category, and I watched all of the winners for the 21st century. Now to be eligible to even be nominated for this award, I've written this down, okay? There's a criteria. To be eligible, the film must have a significant creative involvement by individuals who are British. Now this actually includes people who are a permanent resident in the UK for 10 years or more. The candidates for nomination are the film's directors, writers, and up to 3 producers. If none of those are British, the film will only be eligible in exceptional circumstances. I will also say I watched every film start to finish. Even if I had already seen it before, I watched it again. So with all of that out of the way, I have some thoughts about these best British films, and without further ado, let's go. Now for our 2001 winner, we have Gosford Park. Now, can you have a movie that is any more British than this? I don't think so. Set in the 1930s, Gosford Park is basically like, what if we took Downton Abbey, but we made it a murder mystery? This was so much fun. There are a million faces in this that you will recognize, absolutely packed with just peak British talent. I did have to watch this with subtitles though, because I couldn't understand what anybody was saying. We got Maggie Smith, we got Michael Gambon, we got Charles Dance, we got Tom Hollander, Bob Balaban, Stephen Fry, Helen Mirren, Clive Owen, and so many more. The writing on this was absolutely fabulous. It is so intertwined with every character. Everybody's so, it's like a giant knot. The writing is fabulous. The acting is so good. The amount of like pretentious side eyes that we get, I loved it. This was fabulous, 100% recommend it. If you haven't seen it or if you haven't watched it in a long time, watch it. Now for our 2002 winner, we have The Warrior. So at first glance, this doesn't look like a British film. And fair, but the director is British. From London, I think. Now the story follows our warrior, Iref Khan, who is absolutely fabulous, by the way. He basically renounces his role as this enforcer for a lord. I will say the beginning, fabulous. The end, fabulous. The middle, kind of slow. Started to lose me a little bit. But Khan is incredible. It's an interesting film. The landscape and like the scenery is absolutely gorgeous. It was fine. It was good. Not great for me personally, but it was good. For our 2003 winner, we have Touching the Void. Now, this is a documentary, and it made me feel absolutely sick. Why do we climb? Because it's fun. So this story follows Simon and Joe, British climbers, during one of their climbs in the 1980s. So it is a retelling of what happened, and what happened is absolutely wild. I wasn't super impressed at the beginning. So this is 2003. I think since then we have been saturated with like climbing expedition type documentaries you can watch on Netflix. There's a million of them. So at the beginning I was kind of like, this is fine. Like I've seen documentaries like this. I've seen films like this. It's not anything special anymore. But then once the thing happens, and if you watch this or have seen it, you know what I mean? Once the thing happens, then it just is completely unhinged. Personally, I don't think any of the filmmaking necessarily is groundbreaking or that sort of element. It's the story, right? It's what this man did that is absolutely wild. If you want to feel sick and a bit nauseous and maybe unlock some new fears, check it out. Because, wow. Next up, for 2004's winner, we have My Summer of Love. Now this takes place in the beautiful Yorkshire countryside. We have two young women who meet that are very much opposites, but they both are just fed up with life. So they get together for this wild summer of essentially no consequences. Natalie Press and Emily Blunt, our two leads, were fabulous. The film overall was kind of boring, be completely honest. Great acting, but just like, for me, it was fine. Can you guess who won in 2005? I bet you won't guess. Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Yes, Wallace and Gromit won a BAFTA for Best British Film, and I absolutely love it. There are few things more British than Wallace and Gromit. I had actually never seen this one. I loved it. It's so sweet, and honestly, I smiled through the entire thing. It is so wholesome and yet genuinely funny. It's one of those films that like is a kid's film, right? But there's so much for everybody else in it. I loved it. One of my favorite films growing up as a kid was Chicken Run, which has a lot of the same creative force behind it, like the writers and things. It looks very similar, of course. Chicken Run was like a big part of my childhood. I didn't really watch Wallace and Gromit growing up. I don't know, it wasn't as big perhaps, but there's something so intrinsically British about it. I love it. This was really funny, hilarious, cute. The animation is just, I love it. I love it. So after Wallace and Gromit, we take a hard turn in 2006, and the winner was The Last King of Scotland. Now I recognized the movie poster, but I hadn't actually seen this one. Now this is based on true events. How closely based, I'm not totally sure, but it is based on the events of the brutal, heinous dictator in Uganda, but we see him through the eyes of his personal doctor in the 1970s. So his doctor was from Scotland, came over to Uganda, wanted to make a difference, ended up working for this new leader. We see the leader through the doctor's eyes, which is such an interesting perspective because how he views him is not how he truly is. We have James McAvoy, who plays the Scottish physician, fabulous. Forrest Whitaker plays the dictator. He actually won an Oscar for this, did a fabulous job. Fabulous acting. It's a hard watch. It's brutal. It's tough, but it is a great film. And I really did love, rather than telling the story just at face value, you know, retelling what happened, I love the different perspective coming from the doctor. Next up, 2007, we have This Is England. Never heard of this one before. Wow, great film. This Is England shows how desperate we can be for a sense of community, a sense of purpose. We really just want to be part of a group. Do you know what I mean? So we follow 12-year-old Sean, who is just constantly bullied, has no direction, has no real friends or father figure. He's just sort of floating around directionless. And eventually, Sean gets picked up by a local sort of gang, this little group, and they seem very sweet. They play around with him, but they accept him into their group. Of course, Sean doesn't fully comprehend what a skinhead is, but the audience does. This was another really tough watch. But it was absolutely fabulous. The young boy who plays Sean, I believe this was his first role, and he is absolutely fabulous. Stephen Graham comes in and he is terrifying. What a great actor. We need more Stephen Graham. This was a great film. It's tough to watch, but the acting and the writing, it was great. For 2008, we have quite a different one, a documentary, Man on Wire. Now, at first glance, this is like, okay, it's about a Frenchman who tightrope walks between the Twin Towers in New York City. How is this a British film? But our director, James Marsh, is from Cornwall. Can't do that accent very well. And he's actually on this list more than once. So well done, James. So this documentary follows tightrope walker Philippe Petit, sorry if I didn't say that properly, who basically saw the Twin Towers and was like, I'm gonna walk between them. And if I die, then at least I tried. So while the stunt itself is absolutely insane. The actual preparation and the buildup and what his crew does to get ready for the stunt is so deeply fascinating. It's very stressful. The original footage that they use for the film is incredible. This is just a really interesting film. And I don't often watch documentaries. They're not usually like my go-to thing. This is just something a little bit special. So while on the face of it, it's not typically like what you would consider a British film, but the director did a absolutely fabulous job with this story. Because I think there's a lot of different ways that you could have approached it, but the way that James went after it, and it was great. 2009, we have Fish Tank. Now, I'd never heard of this one. I was stressed out the entire time, but it is fabulous. Is it fun? No, it is not a fun watch. It is not a feel-good movie. It is stressful and upsetting and fabulous. So Fish Tank follows 15-year-old Mia after her mother brings home a new boyfriend. This felt so real. It feels very British. When you watch it, like visually, everything, it's very, very British. The only thing I would say is Michael Fassbender plays the boyfriend, and he kind of stuck out as a sore thumb for me because it's like, okay, I know who that is. It kind of takes you out of it. I wish they could have picked somebody who we just had no idea who he was, because otherwise this felt so completely real. It was one of those films where, kind of like This Is England, although Stephen Graham is quite recognizable in that, it feels so much just like a real British story. It is tough to watch. It is stressful. Mia was so good in this. Great film. I would definitely recommend it, but yeah, I was very stressed out. For 2010, we have quite a big blockbuster film. We have The King's Speech. Now, I had seen this before. I think most people have, but I watched it again and I still really enjoyed it. So the story follows King George VI as he ascends to the throne. He has this debilitating stutter and he's trying to get over it. Fabulous, great story. It's just a very like straightforward story, but it's so good. Jeffrey Rush and Colin Firth are fabulous in this. The sets, I couldn't stop looking at like the costumes and the sets and everything. It's just beautiful. It's definitely a like blockbuster big film, but a fabulous, very straightforward, great story. This also won a bunch of Oscars, if I remember correctly, for this year. Like it was a big film. Great film. If you haven't seen it yet for some reason, The King's Speech, go ahead and watch it. It was great. It kind of reminded me of a film my dad would rent for us from Blockbuster like one Friday night. Like, you know, that Blockbuster sort of family film that we would get together and have popcorn and watch. It's just a great film. And after some of the real depressing films I've watched on this list, watching The King's Speech was a relief. For 2011, we have another Colin Firth film. He was a busy man. We have Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy. Now, I actually hadn't watched this one. I had heard about it forever. I don't know why I never did, because guess what? It's a great movie. So in Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, difficult to say, we follow George Smiley, who comes out of sort of semi-retirement, and he is tasked with trying to find a Soviet agent during the Cold War era who has embedded himself in MI6. Now, this film was actually really fun to watch because I watched it with you guys. So I live stream on Twitch twice a week, every Sunday night and every Wednesday night. We hang out, we play games, we chat, we do crafts, and sometimes we watch films. So I actually watched this film with the community, which is really fun, and we could sort of chat about it as we went along. So if that's something that interests you and you wanna join in on the live streams, please consider joining me on Twitch if you like. It's free. You don't have to subscribe or anything. You can just come along and hang out. I'm there twice a week. There's always links in the video descriptions. Just throwing it out there. But I had a great time watching this. Literally every face you will recognize. If you haven't seen this already, every face you will recognize. The acting was incredible. The writing was incredible. Just a great, great spy movie. And to be honest, I love a spy film. Is there anything better? For our 2012 winner, we have Skyfall. This is actually the only James Bond film on the list, and it's honestly one of my least favorite. Can I just say, Casino Royale is a great film. If we're talking like Daniel Craig era Casino Royale, I love it. Skyfall, in my humble opinion, just falls flat. Like, yeah, I'll watch it because, you know, there's explosions and like action and stuff, and it's just not very good, in my humble opinion. Skyfall, if you can't remember, is the one where James Bond gets shot at the beginning and he kind of like fakes his own death, but he has to come back because like MI6 is under attack and he has to figure out what's going on. Totally unrelated. I remember I used to work in a school in Canada and our choir chose this song, Skyfall, from Adele as one of their like winter concert songs because it was such a big song, right? I listened to this student choir practice that song for months. And I love Adele, but I never want to hear it again. So yes, Skyfall won Best British Film for this year. Do I think it was worth it? Not really. Literally any of the other James Bond films are better, but here we are. So I watched it anyway. For our 2013 winner, this was quite the controversy because Gravity won Best British Film. Now why? Why would this very American film win Best British Film? So I wrote it down so I wouldn't get it wrong. It's definitely not a British story. So Gravity is the one with George Clooney and Sandra Bullock. They're up in space and bad stuff happens. So we have two very American actors up in space. And while it isn't a British story, it was produced by David Heyman, British, and it was shot at Pinewood Studios outside of London and Shepperton Studios in Surrey. The shoot production employed a local crew, and the visual effects were handled by the UK company Framestore, and this composer, Stephen Price, is British as well. So while on the face of it, this does not look like a British film, the people behind it, it was actually quite a British production. And I'm so sorry to them, but this movie sucks. This is probably one of my least favorite on the list. It is, you know, a big Hollywood film. You got really recognizable actors. I hated it. I remember going to the cinema to watch this when this first came out, and yes, it's as nauseating as I remember it being. I didn't like it when I saw it back in 2013, and I didn't like it when I watched it. This time, it is nauseating, it's kind of boring. I will say as well, I'd be very interested in your thoughts. I don't think this holds up. I know the special effects took years to make, but when I was watching it now, it looks like a video game. So if you have a couple hours to spare, you got nothing better to do, watch this again. I don't think it stands out. It looks very video game-esque to me. And overall, the story is just kind of, I don't know, it is stressful. You know, you're in space, you don't want to die in space, but otherwise, I really didn't like this. I felt sick for the rest of the day. So watch at your own risk. Next up for 2014, we have The Theory of Everything. So this is the one where Eddie Redmayne portrays Stephen Hawking. Wow, Eddie, you did a good job, buddy. But rather than just following Stephen Hawking's career, it really focuses on his relationship with his wife, Jane. I thought it was a great film. I did see it in the cinema when it first came out, but I really didn't remember it. And I think it's a great movie. Great acting, great music. Great music in this one. Our boy James Marsh from Cornwall, who did the Tightrope Walker. That's really hard to say. He did Man on Wire. He also did The Theory of Everything. So well done, James. I thought this film was great. Is it like life-changing, wildly, like I'm gonna think about it forever? Probably not. It's a good story. I think where there's so much subject matter to choose from, they did a great job at really making a concise story. And I really like that they focus on the relationship between the two characters, and his illness and his work is kind of like the backdrop. Overall, great. Eddie Redmayne did a fabulous job. I don't envy having to do this role because I feel like it is so complex and difficult. He did a great job. And overall, it's a fun movie. Fun maybe isn't the right word. It's a good movie. 2015, we have Brooklyn. So this film actually hits a little too close to home. So Brooklyn takes place in the 1950s. We have a young Irish girl who comes over to Brooklyn, to New York City to live. And then she has to face the dreaded immigrant decision of whether to stay in Brooklyn or to go back to Ireland. I thought this was a good film. It does hit close to home. It does cover a lot of complicated feelings when you move to a foreign country. The guilt, because the guilt is real, and I feel like not a lot of people talk about that. The guilt of leaving your home and your family, the confusion over your identity of what is the best decision, of what is expected of you versus what you want. All of those types of themes are very present in this film. Obviously, my story as a Canadian moving to England is a little bit different. We do have technology, so I don't have to rely on writing letters, but a lot of that, like those feelings underneath, they're still there. So I thought this was quite interesting. I do remember watching this when I first moved to the UK versus now. And it was a really interesting comparison. So even if you haven't moved abroad or you're not interested in moving abroad, I still think it's a good story. For 2016, we have Daniel Blake. Now, never heard of this one. A tough watch. My God. So the story follows Daniel, who recently had a heart attack. He is basically forced off of work, can't work. He goes to the doctor. They're like, yeah, you cannot work. But his benefits are rejected and they say, no, you're well enough to work. So now he's stuck in the middle and we follow him through all of the red tape in order to either get back to work or to get his benefits. To be honest, this didn't even look like a film. It didn't feel like a film. It didn't have all the typical film elements. It just looked like a really depressing BBC documentary. I don't even think there was any music in this. Like, it was just shot like face on, just like a documentary. Parts of it were very upsetting, but other parts were very heartwarming. It shows just how humiliating the situation was and how the system or the government views people like Daniel, where, you know, you're forced to jump through hoops and nothing makes sense and you are just a person trying to live, and how overwhelming and frustrating and literally how you're treated like an animal. It was a tough watch, but I do think it is a great film. Also, so many Geordie accents. Wow. I definitely didn't watch this with the subtitles on. For 2017, we have 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. Now, why is this a British film? That's a good question. Now, director, sorry if I pronounced this wrong, Martin McDonnell, perhaps, is British, and he's actually on this list another time too, so well done, Martin. And just as a side note, it is quite interesting, you know, this film is such an American driven story. It's a fabulous film, by the way, but it's so interesting that this was directed by a British man. You know, movies are so borderless nowadays. I just thought that was pretty cool. So this story follows a mother who is trying to bring attention to her daughter's unsolved murder. It is absolutely fabulous. It is so darkly funny, like truly, truly funny. And the subject matter is not funny. Our lead, Frances McDormand, I can never pronounce her last name, Frances. You did a great job in this. But to be honest, all of the characters do so well in this. It is such a great film, a very straightforward plot, and I think it's absolutely fabulous. I will say the first time I saw this was on a plane, and there are a lot of swear words in this, like every other word is a swear word, but on the plane it was dubbed. So it was constantly like, crap, this is stupid, you stupid idiot. I'm like, I don't think that's what they said. Alrighty, next up. I hope I haven't missed any. I just had like the terrifying thought that I've actually missed something. So if I have, just go ahead and ignore it. 2018 though, we have The Favorite. What a wild film. So we are in 18th century England when everybody gets a little bit upset when a new servant becomes the favorite of Queen Anne. This is unlike any period drama or historical drama that I have ever seen, and I love it. It's so surprising. It's so weird. Like, it's weird to see this sort of like, it should be like a formal drama. You know, the costumes are incredible. The sets are incredible. You know, we're in 18th century England. And it's so weird. I love it. Olivia Colman also won the Oscar for this, I'm pretty sure, which, not surprised, she's absolutely fabulous. So if you're looking for something that's just a little bit different, just a little bit like, huh? This is great. I loved it. Now, not to be confusing, but 2019's winner is 1917. Now, this story follows two soldiers who are given a message, and over the course of a day, they need to deliver it before it's too late. Now, this is absolutely fabulous. I love the commitment to making this look like it was shot in one take. Of course, it is not, and a whole lot of technical organization had to go into making it look that good. I remember watching, I think it was a documentary about how they were shooting. So a lot of this, of course, is outside, and you have to shoot at similar times of the day so the light is the same. And they were doing one take where the sun was coming up, and they had to do it at a specific time. So everybody's like waiting around, waiting for that time. And they had such a short window to complete the shot. Otherwise, they'd have to wait another day. It's absolutely wild. Sam Mendes is the director who also did Skyfall. Sam, what happened? Skyfall sucked. This was so good. This is a great war film told in a really interesting way. I love a good war film and spy films. Hi, how are you? I like war films and spy films, and this is a great one. For 2020, we have a Promising Young Woman. So this follows a woman who has gone through a horrible thing and now wants vengeance. Why is this British? That's a good question. Well, the writer and director is British. Of course, we also have Carey Mulligan, who is British. So on the face of it, this is a very American-led story. The set, of course, the location, all of that sort of stuff. But there actually is a very big British presence, which allowed this film to be nominated and to ultimately win Best British Film. Promising Young Woman was not what I expected. It is surprising, it is interesting, it is different. It's a story that we've kind of heard in ways, in other films, you know, in different ways, but not this way. It did really feel kind of like two parts that are completely different to each other, really in tone and in direction. And it was really interesting to see the film turn, if you know what I mean. Hashtag no spoilers. Super interesting story. I love being surprised. I did not see this film coming in the way that it did. I thought it was fabulous. I love being surprised by movies. I've seen a lot of them. And being surprised is one of my favorites. For 2021, we have Belfast. Now, this is our only black and white film. Now, I had actually avoided this film because people said it was a musical. I do not like musicals. In my mind, I was picturing like West Side Story, like a bunch of dancing and singing. That is absolutely not Belfast. So Belfast follows the story of a family in the 1960s and their decision, do they stay in Belfast or do they leave? This was beautifully shot. Of course, being in black and white, I feel like it's more difficult because you really have to have the shades stand out more. So beautifully shot, absolutely gorgeous. It did kind of feel like a play. Like you could see this taking place on a stage. Beautiful, heartbreaking. Anything about the Troubles is just deeply sad, but I found that this was a really interesting viewpoint, like an interesting perspective on that time in history of a very real story that I think lots of people will resonate with, whether in their own family history or people that they know. I just think it was a great film. I was kind of disappointed that I hadn't watched it until now, but at least I watched it. For 2022, I watched The Banshees of Inisherin. Not totally certain I pronounced that properly. I love this film. Can I just come out and say that I loved it? It's a whole film of basically, why don't you like me? There is so much under the surface for this film. I do love, like, how often do we have a very, period piece? The location is absolutely gorgeous. The scenery and everything, the timing of it is fabulous. And the basic premise is literally, why won't you be my friend? But underneath that, there's so much going on. I think this is a fabulous film. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and watch it. I had absolutely no idea what to expect. I went into this not knowing anything. This was a rewatch, so this was my second watch. You definitely pick up a lot more the second time around. The acting is incredible. The writing is incredible. The choices that they made when making this film were just fabulous. Overall, it is so good. You guys, it's a great movie. And the donkey, the donkey. Overall, I had so much fun with this experiment. There were only a couple films that I didn't like, Gravity being one of them. But it was so much fun experiencing films I had never heard of and rewatching some I hadn't seen in a really long time. I had so much fun with this video and I hope you guys liked it. And I would definitely recommend watch these films, form your own opinions. Let me know what you thought in the comments. If you would like to watch more videos, which would be totally awesome, why not check out this one where I listened to the best British albums of all time. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye!